I'm Justin Spicer with the Ohio State Legal Services Association, and I'm here with Kathy Hoover, staff attorney with the Low Income Taxpayer Clinic at the Legal Aid Society of Columbus, and Luke Minak, staff attorney with the Low Income Taxpayer Clinic of Southeastern Ohio Legal Services. Today, we're continuing our self-employment series talking about the Form 1099-K. Feel free to leave a comment or a question below, and we'll answer whatever we can. Luke, there's been a lot of talk in the media lately about Form 1099-K. Can you give our viewers an update on what has changed?
Definitely. So if you are self-employed, own a business, or sell personal items and accept payments through payment apps like Cash App or Venmo, or online third payment companies like Etsy or eBay or PayPal, you need to report that as income for tax purposes. So what has changed is whether a 1099-K will be sent to the taxpayer. Before recent legislation, you had to have gross payments that exceeded $20,000 and more than 200 transactions before a Form 1099-K would be sent. Now, if you have gross payments that exceed $600, you will receive a Form 1099-K. Even if you receive the Form 1099-K, it does not automatically mean you'll owe income tax on the gross sales reported on the form. A common misconception is the Form 1099-K is a new tax that taxpayers will have to pay on their profits. The change is actually not a new tax, but a new reporting requirement for payment organizations. As I said earlier, any income you make has always been reportable income for tax purposes. On December 23rd, the IRS announced they are delaying the new reporting requirements for the 1099-K until the 2023 filing season in 2024. For 2022 taxes, the old rules will still apply. Still, it's important to know this requirement is coming.
Kathy, what happens if a taxpayer gets a $1,000 gift from his grandparents for his birthday by Cash App? Is the taxpayer gonna have to pay tax on that money?
Oh no, the law is not meant to track personal expenses such as birthdays or holiday gifts or sharing the cost of a car ride or a meal or paying a family member back for a bill.
Okay. What is included on the Form 1099-K?
So whether you own a business or self-employed or selling personal items, the Form 1099-K includes the gross amounts of all payment transactions. The gross amount does not include any adjustments for any discounts, fees, or refunds. The dollar amount of each transaction is figured out on the day of the transaction.
Kathy, what happens if the taxpayer receives a 1099-K for personal items sold, but they sold those items at a loss?
If you receive a Form 1099-K for a personal item sold at a loss, you report the information on what's called a 1040 Schedule 1, additional income and adjustments to income with offsetting transactions. For example, you get a Form 1099-K for selling your couch online for $700, but you paid $1,000 for the couch. In this case, you report the $700 amount you received on the 1040 line 8Z, other income, and then on line 24Z, other adjustments, you report a negative amount of $700 so that the transaction nets to zero. You must net a transaction like this to zero. You cannot take a loss on a personal item. In this case, the $300 more that you paid originally for that couch.
What if the taxpayer sells a personal item but at a gain, Luke?
So if you sold an item you own for personal use, such as your car, refrigerator, furniture, at a gain, your gain is taxable as what is called a capital gain. You have a capital gain if you sell the asset for more than your adjusted basis, which is normally the price that you purchased the item for. For example, if you sold your coin collection for $6,000, but you only paid $3,000, you report the $3,000 gain under Schedule D as a capital gains. For more information about the Schedule D, you can go to irs.gov and search for Schedule D in the search bar.
Kathy, what if the taxpayer has a mix of personal items sold, some at a gain and others at a loss?
So your gains and loss for different transaction types must be reported separately. Gains cannot be offset by losses. As an example, if you sold a couch at a $300 loss and you sold a stove at a $300 gain, you cannot offset those to zero. Instead, you must report each transaction separately. So in this example, you would have income of $300 for the stove, but you would have no loss or no income for the couch.
Luke, if the taxpayer receives a Form 1099-K by mistake, what should they do?
So if a taxpayer receives a Form 1099-K by mistake, or if the form they receive has incorrect information, they should contact the issuer of the Form 1099-K. The issuer's name and phone number will appear in the upper left-hand corner of the form. If you cannot get a corrected Form 1099-K, you would report it the same as personal assets sold at a loss, as Kathy talked about earlier. The only difference is you would change the description on line 8Z to Form 1099-K received an error, and line 24Z, Form 1099-K received an error. For example, if you receive a Form 1099-K because of the $1,000 birthday gift your grandparents gave you, you'd want to follow this process of reporting it on both lines so that the net would be zero.
So what happens if a taxpayer receives a Form 1099-K, but they've been sharing access to their payment apps with someone else?
So if you share access to your payment apps or online third-party organization with another person or business, your Form 1099-K will include payment transactions belonging to that other person or business, in addition to your own payments. Each person or business should include their share of the total payment amount on their Schedule C. To see how this works, Tammy, taxpayer, owns Tammy's coffee shop. Tammy accepts payments through Cash App and Venmo. Bob decides to open Bob's Bagel Bistro inside Tammy's coffee shop, and they agree to share the Cash App and Venmo under Tammy's account. At the end of the year, Tammy would receive a 1099-K that reports all payment transactions. 10, the 1099-K that she receives has Bob's share of $2,000 of the total of the gross payments of $3,000. Tammy would need to provide to Bob a 1099-K for his share of the payments. Bob would then need to report the $2,000 for his business on his Schedule C.
Luke, what happens if the taxpayer bought or sold a business during the year or changed the business entity structure during the year?
So if you bought or sold a business during the year, your Form 1099-K may include payments for transactions made before you bought or after you sold the business. This can happen when the tax identification number and business name associated with the payment app is not updated with the new owner's information. You should request a corrected Form 1099-K from the issuer. Also, keep a copy of the Form 1099-K or corrected 1099-K and keep the purchase or sales agreement that shows when ownership changed. Using the example above, Tammy sells the coffee shop to Bob in March of 2023. When Tammy receives the 1099-K in January of 2024, because they forgot to update the business information, she needs to figure out what amount on the 1099-K reflects her portion and what portion is Bob's. Tammy should also request a corrected Form 1099-K from the issuer that only shows transactions from January to March of 2023. Similarly, if you change your business structure during the year, such as incorporating a sole proprietorship to an LLC, and continue to use the same payment app, the amount shown on the 1099-K will not correspond correctly to the two entities. Be sure to keep documentation that shows the correct income and deductions for both business entities.
So Kathy, if people have more questions, what resources are available?
So you can go to irs.gov and search for Understanding Your Form 1099-K. Also, Justin will drop a link in the chat to a fact sheet made by the IRS.
All right. Thanks everyone for listening. And as a reminder, this is the 7th in our series of videos on self-employment. Join us next time on February 3rd when we talk about the Schedule C. Remember, this segment and all others in the Tax Chat series are available on our Facebook page. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you next time.